everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Veterans Breakfast Club. I'm Todd DiPastino, and I am old enough to be amazed that we're able to do a live program with people from Guadalcanal, who are there in Guadalcanal right now in the Solomon Islands. With us is Jeff Ballard. Glenn Flickinger is going to be hosting the program, and we have Jeff with the SS Nautilus and the Ocean Exploration Trust. So welcome to the program. I'm going to be just working behind the scenes here, and Glenn is going to be our host. Thank you, Glenn, for putting this together.
Well, all it took on my part were a couple of emails. It started with Jeff Ballard's kind invitation to meet the people from Ocean Exploration Trust. So, Jeff, thank you so very, very much. We need to unmute him out. I'll get that.
Sorry. Yeah, sure thing. Happy to do it.
Yeah. So for those of you that have followed Greatest Generation Live for the past 5 years that I've been doing this, we've had Jeff on a couple of times. Jeff is a incredibly knowledgeable historian about the naval battles off Guadalcanal, naval battles in the Pacific in general, but particularly off of Guadalcanal. And we've had him on at least a couple times, if not more, to talk about that. And Jeff also, a couple of years ago, kindly introduced us to his uncle. I have it right, Jeff? His uncle,
Correct.
who is Bob Ballard, the famous ocean exploration explorer who found the Titanic and many other ships, many other archaeological sites. And we had a wonderful night with Bob Ballard a couple of years ago. What a wonderful man. We don't know if he's going to be on tonight. That was sort of random as to who might be available tonight from the Nautilus. But Jeff, you've just been so very, very kind.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. This is an incredibly important story, and the more we can expand on it and really appreciate the sacrifices that were made here. Anything that we can do to further that, I think, is incredibly important.
Yeah, for sure. And like Todd, I'm just sort of awed at the fact that you're 15 hours away on the other side of the world, and this is just a basic Zoom connection, nothing fancier than that. So we're waiting for, I think, the personnel on the Nautilus to link in. I did get an email from Megan Cook, Todd and Jeff, saying that they apologize for the delay. They'll be on in just a moment.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I do see their logo here, Ocean Exploration Trust, as a Zoom square, and ask them to unmute. So when they're ready, I'm sure they will.
Yeah, the Nautilus is on a wreck right now. I'll let Megan just. I'm not sure that they've identified it yet. I'll let her fill us in on the latest. But all of the Nautilus operates 24/7, and it's everybody can get the live stream at nautiluslive.org, and you can, when there's people in the control van, you can actually interact with the communications fellows and ask questions, and their scientists. They're scientists on board the ship, and it's scientists and historians on board the ship, and then also ashore that you can interact with.
Yeah, and how long has it been there in Iron Bottom Sound?
We've been here two weeks now, and I think the vehicles they started ROV operations, I believe, on July the 2nd.
Wow. Yeah.
And so.
When I had the chance to speak with Megan to set this up, I said, "Geez, there must be how many dozens of wrecks, scores of wrecks of sunk ships in Iron Bottom Sound." And she actually gave me a number, which I'm going to guess at 115. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's the number in the project plan. But there's
of which have only found less than half, I think.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's still quite a few undiscovered wrecks out there, and not only warships, but also aircraft that were shot down.
Yeah.
American, Japanese aircraft that were lost to operational, issues. I know that there's at least one Japanese submarine out here somewhere. There's there are PT boats. I'm sure there's lots of landing craft and things like that that were lost. And then, as I mentioned, all along the coast west of Honiara, there's a number of Japanese transports that beached themselves, and so that they could unload their troops.
Yeah.
So there's plenty to see.
Yeah.
Speaking of plenty to see, and I know that we're waiting for Megan Cook and the others on board the Nautilus to join us, but Jeff, I know that you're on land right now. You're not on the
That's correct.
Nautilus. Would you mind, you have a beautiful face, but would you mind turning your camera around so we can see
Oh,
what
you're
you're looking at?
sure. Okay. So that's Savo Island. Tell me when you can see it.
Keep on turning, and then we'll have it'll take a minute or two to adjust the light. Yeah, if you down a little bit, maybe. There we go. There's Savo Island. Now we see it. Yep.
Okay.
So that island in the distance is Savo Island.
That's Savo Island.
How far away is that?
Oh, 5 miles? I'm
Okay.
terrible. I'm terrible with distances. I'm sure that Megan will be able to clue you in on it. But I know that if we keep going towards the east, and you can't see it because of the cloud cover, but that's Ingela and Tulagi, which is 20 miles away. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
I've taken that trip a couple of times. And then keep going to the east, and that is Point Cruz, which
And I'm-
was
and I'm just going to, I know that Ocean Exploration Trust education team I think they might have dropped off. They just said that they could not unmute themselves. I asked them to unmute, but they couldn't, I guess they couldn't get that going. So Point Cruz was what we were looking at before?
yes, Point Cruz, which was is west west of the Matanikau River, which for the most part the Matanikau represented the front lines on the western front. So Point Cruz was behind behind Japanese lines.
Okay, and Glenn, you could take over the conversation. I'm gonna interact here with
See what you
Ocean
can-
Exploration Trust.
Yeah. And so Jeff, just for the audience, we were talking before you hopped on. You're there also taking people that are participating in this to various parts of the island to see the battlefields.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, that's correct. I'm responsible for running the battlefield tour component of the onshore.
Yeah.
So as VIPs and Nautilus crew members transition in and out of the airport here in Honiara, they typically will spend a night here at the Heritage Park Hotel. And while they're here, one of the options that they have, weather permitting, is that we can go out to the various battlefield sites here around Honiara. We've been as far east as Hell's Point, which is where the Australian Army operates an unexploded ordnance detachment. And then as far west as the Vilu War Museum, which people who are interested can look up on the website called Pacific Rex. And they have just about every one of the pieces that are on display at the Vilu War Museum available on Pacific Rex.
Yeah.
And we've been here 14 days. We have had guests or crew members transition.
There we go. Got him.
There we go. All
There we
right.
go.
Sorry, Jeff, to
Yay.
interrupt. Go ahead,
Oh my
Jeff.
God, no, please take over.
Well,
We hello. That's Bob Ballard, I believe.
last time I checked, it was, and
Yeah.
Megan Cook.
Hi,
And-
pleasure to be here with you all. Thanks for the opportunity to share this expedition and some of the exciting things that have been happening here on Nautilus.
Well, we've been very busy. We're in the command center aboard the Nautilus. Quite honestly, if you go to nautiluslive.org, right now you'll see what's happening underwater. We're about to recover the vehicles right now, but we have lots of pictures to show you. So let me give you a little backstory. As you know, I came here in 1991 and 1992, and we were able to locate 14 of the warships, the major ones in particular, the Quincy, the Canberra, the De Haven, and on the list goes. The only two of the main heavy cruisers we didn't get then were the Vincennes and the Astoria, which Paul Allen later discovered those two. We also, on our trip back then, discovered the Kurishima, the Japanese battleship, and then he went on to find the Hiei. So the major warships that were in the campaign have been located, and that led to the television program that I'm assuming some of you may have seen, as well as the book we did on the lost ships of Guadalcanal. So we've come back with quite a different technologies than we had in 1991 and 1992. We have our ship of exploration, the EV Nautilus. I think we can show you a picture of that. And there it is. That's it, steaming off Savo Island in the background. It's a 130-foot ship, and it carries quite an arsenal of technologies. But our primary vehicle systems that we're using on this expedition are the Hercules and Atalanta vehicles. So maybe we can show them that. And then we'll get to the other ones that we got. We got a lot. There it is. That's our primary ROV, and it's has a companion vehicle called Atalanta. Our vehicles are capable, most of them, not all, are capable of going to 6,000 meters, which is 98% of the world's oceans. Hercules, this particular vehicle, is good to 13,000 feet, and clearly that's not a challenge for us here in Iron Bottom Sound. I think the deepest we've gone so far is about 1,000 meters. So we also have, so its primary job right now has been to go back to all the warships that we saw in the past and track them down and film them in a whole different format. So what we're doing now is we go in to a ship with a sonar system called the Norbit imaging system. You can see that, and we go in and literally create a three-dimensional acoustical model of that. Show them one of the finished products.
Absolutely.
So let's show them one that we're there. There it is. And then after we now know what its present condition is, and equally important, where all the dangerous places are. We then come into visual mode, and you'll see on this map a series of wiggly lines, and we go and literally go in and with very high definition stereo camera systems image it, and then once we've done that, we then run right down the axis. The goal is to have 100% visual content of those shipwrecks, and then we fuse those data sets of the acoustical and the optical data set into a video that will then be able to give you a spectacular view of the ship. We also then have, also on our Hercules, a very high resolution immersive camera system. We actually have camera systems that can project imagery on an IMAX screen, a totally immersive screen. What you're seeing here is just this single images that we've been taking. And like I say, we've taken terabytes of those so far. And so we're now pulling the vehicle. We have an issue of the zoom control on one of the cameras.
The great thing about brand new technology is sometimes you got to keep developing it.
Well, and this is the first time we've, why do you want to do something twice? So we're always pushing the envelope. Our ship costs us $60,000 a day, so we count every second. And that's that platform. We also have then the hunting platform, and that's the DRIX. And the DRIX vehicle system is actually being operated from a room at the Heritage Park a resort. So we have, I don't know if you have a picture of the team there.
I'm not sure I do, but they imagine.
Add it to your
You've got it.
arsenal. But we have a team that's operating this vehicle system also on a 24-hour 4 on 8 off watch, and they're looking for new ones. And they actually sent us some new ones, and we were just diving on a new one, and it took us a while. Fortunately, we have Japanese historians as well as American historians aboard, and we were able to identify the name of that destroyer. My ability to pronounce things is not perfect.
We think this might be Teruzuki.
Yeah,
and
I'll spell it for you.
Just finding it in the last about 4 hours. So that was a DRIX unknown mapping target. So as DRIX has found anomalies, some of those have been geological, some of those have been man-made.
Well, we ran across the bow of the New Orleans.
We did.
And that was a very small sonar target, but the one we just imaged moments ago is, I'll spell it for you, Teruzuki, built in 1941. And we just left the bottom from that to do this rendezvous. So that guy has got many new targets for us. So over the next several, we have, I think, another 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
We'll be going to hopefully catch up with it, because it's finding target after target after target. And then we have a third platform, which is called the Wildberry. And the Wildberry has a decompression chamber, and it's capable of doing diving operations. So for some of the shallow water wrecks, let's see if you have a picture.
I do.
No, that's the
Wildberry. I do.
That's the Berry Ferry.
Yes, the Berry Ferry.
That's actually deployed from the Wildberry, and you'll see a boom on it, and it has a very high frequency sonar system that can work down to in excess of 100 meters for the shallow water wrecks. And then also we have dive scooters. I don't know if you have a picture of them.
No, we haven't been telling that story much.
I have to give you I have pictures of the scooters that we can then literally put divers in the water with scooters. I think I have a picture of it in the swimming pool. We were just testing it.
Yes.
And that system, we can track. Here's a picture of it. I'll hold it up to the camera. If you can see
a dive scooter with a very elaborate camera on it. Yes.
And we can literally track the lens. Think about what I'm going to say. We can track the lens underwater in geographic coordinates and track 6 divers at a time. And they're able to then, so imagine that ship image you just saw where we went in with the sonar system on the Hercules. We have that same higher resolution on the Berry Ferry, so it'll make same kind of imaging, 3-dimensional image, and then like Hercules camera is fused with that data set, the scooter's images are fused with the Berry Ferry's image to create a similar thing. So we're literally from shore to the abyss. I mean, some of the wrecks we're diving on, the bow of the Japanese transports are sticking out of the water. So we're literally going from the beach down to the maximum depths of Iron Bottom Sound. And you can follow all of it live. I mean, you know, if you haven't already been doing that,
yes.
As soon as we do this personnel transfer, we can show you, these are all the places you can follow us on, but the optimum one is nautiluslive.org. That we have experts on call that are on watch, and you can literally ask them questions and pull in people in the. We have, like I say, three complete watches. It takes 12 people to run a watch, and we have 3 sets of 12. And I'm on the 4 to 8.
You're waking up early.
Well, you know, I've reset my clock. You know, I've been was in the Navy for 30 years, so I know how to reset my clock. So anyway, that's where we're at. So let's throw it open to questions. and see what we get. So
Yeah, we'll have an opportunity
back
for
to you, Todd.
some questions for Bob, and then we'll also be joined a little bit later by Navy History and Heritage archivist
bring in the
Frank
expert.
Thompson as well. So we'll have an opportunity to ask both of them questions. But while we have Dr. Ballard,
Yeah,
go ahead.
We'll,
If you'd like
we'll
to get
call
started.
him in.
Yep, he'll be joining in.
We're recovering the vehicle right now, and he's on watch, so we'll pull him in.
He'll join us in about 10 minutes.
And he'll talk in a language that only you understand. Fire away, Todd.
I'll throw it to Glenn to ask a question. I know that we have one in the chat. Barb Smith here asks, did your team locate the USS Indianapolis with Paul Allen on August 19th? Okay.
No, he beat us. He beat us by a month, rascal.
Yeah.
But anyway, he also beat us on the in the Sea of Cortez on the Lexington. But he's no longer with us, so we're now beating him.
One way to address the issue, right?
Yeah. But the
one thing they focused on was obviously the discovery of the Titanic and the discovery of the Bismarck, the Yorktown. But I happen to have a soft spot in my heart for ancient shipwrecks. So we've discovered over 55 ancient shipwrecks dating back to the time of Homer. So no, we've been very, very busy in the Black Sea where the ships are perfectly preserved, yes. Also in the Aegean and Western Mediterranean. So we cut our teeth there I've been doing it. I started working in the Black Sea in 1990. So I've been at it a while.
And Ocean Exploration Trust is 17 this year.
Yeah. And Ocean Exploration just came online in 2009. Yeah. And so TOS.org and see all of our past campaigns and download them free. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, Bob, this is Glenn. Curious, why is the Black Sea so, the artifacts so well preserved there? And how's that compare to Iron Bottom Sound?
That's an easy question. You have to know that my PhD is in geology and geophysics. I'm a geologist. I just happen to bump into things. Now, in the case of the Black Sea, if you know anything about the Ice Age, if you go back to the last glacial maximum, which was 22,000 BPE before the present era, sea level was down 120 meters from what it is today. And if you drop down, as you know, the Mediterranean is connected to the Atlantic at great depth. So when the oceans of the world went down, remember during the peak of the Ice Age, there was 15 million cubic kilometers of ice that were on land. And that caused the sea level to drop because the water wasn't coming back. So then the sea level began to rise as the glaciers were melting. But the Bosporus at the connection between the Sea of Marmara, which through the Dardanelles is connected to the Aegean, which is connected to the Med, which is connected to the Atlantic, all came rising back up and reclaiming the land they lost during the glacial period, right to the very mouth of the Bosporus. Right where the clacking rocks. This is where Jason and the Argonauts went and searched the Golden Fleece. This is where Ulysses, where you tie him up on the mast and put wax in his oarsman's ears so they aren't called onto the rocks by the sirens and all of that. So when the sea level went down, the salt water in the Black Sea was replaced by the fresh water pouring in that didn't get out. So it flipped the Black Sea into a freshwater sea, very much like the Caspian Sea. So now here you are. By the way, this is where the Bible puts the biblical flood, because it's Mount Ararat is on the southern shore of the Black Sea. So Noah and his buddies are living in a very fertile area, and we went in and documented when that flood took place by going along the ancient shoreline during that glacial maximum, picking up shells along that ancient shoreline, which we were able to then identify as a mixture of freshwater shells and saltwater shells spanning 15,000 years. So we were able to then to carbon 14 all the shells and tell you the exact moment 7,000 BPE, 5,000 BC roughly, when the flood broke in. And the hydraulic head of the world's oceans was so great when it broke through the Bosporus that the water, they say, went in a mile before it landed on that ancient shore 120 meters down. And that's the flood. Now, a lot of other cultures have flood stories, and there were 6 major floods. If you look at the rise of sea level over the last 22,000 years, it stopped 6 times. And that's because glaciers are frozen rivers. They follow the rivers, but they have in front of them a vast terminal moraine. And when they begin to retreat, they don't really retreat. They melt faster than they're advancing, and they dump their terminal moraine. If you look at the island of Nantucket, it's in the shape of a tongue. It's a vast terminal moraine. So all over the world were these vast reservoirs of water trapped behind those ancient dams, and they all went 6 times. So we were focusing on the one that flooded the Black Sea, and we were able to date that shoreline at 7,000 BPE when that flood took place. So what happened was, what came in after the flood was salt water. So the Black Sea had flipped to fresh water, and there's no wood borers in fresh water, okay? And so if you go into the Great Lakes and Thunder Bay, which we've done, all the wooden ships are still preserved because there's no teredos, there's no shipworms, there's no one to eat the wood. And so they do well in fresh water. The salt water that came in, naturally by gravity, went to the bottom of the Black Sea and eventually pushed all the fresh water back out, and it flipped back to a saltwater sea. The problem is, in time, it lost its oxygen. So any biological activity in the early years of that refilling would have removed the oxygen. Oxygen is found throughout the world's oceans because water has an interesting characteristic at 4 degrees centigrade of reaching its maximum density. And then, so when you take a high H2O, a molecule, you'll see it vibrating. We call it Brownian motions. And then at 2 degrees, those two positive hydrogen atoms push one another apart to an angle of 109 degrees. And that's why ice floats. That's why you have fish in Canada, because it freezes on the top, but it's always 4 degrees. You can always count on, in the ocean, at the very bottom, putting a thermometer out and finding 4 degrees, because that water is coming from the polar regions. So you have the North Pole and the South Pole generating cold 4 degrees waters that flows down to the bottom of the ocean, carrying oxygen with it. That cannot happen in the Black Sea. There's no way to get over the sill. So it lost its oxygen. And it's the largest reservoir of dissolved hydrogen sulfide in the world. And so any ship that sinks there is perfectly preserved. If you go on the web right now and you say preserved shipwrecks of the Black Sea, you'll see them, and they look like they built a model and put it underwater yesterday. Wow. And we, in one case, found human remains. We found, in the case when we were off of the Crimea at 9,000 feet, we came across a Russian helicopter, perfectly preserved, with a red star on the tail, and the pilot and co-pilot sitting in their seats. On the shallower area, you can actually have, it's a meniscus. So you know what a meniscus is when you fill your cup of, you can literally have the center of the cup higher than the edge of the cup, and that's called a menisca. It's like a groundwater. And in the Black Sea, it can have a meniscus where the anoxic layer is at a shallower depth in the middle and out to the edge. But then during the winter, it spalls off internal waves that bring oxygen in. So when you look at up on the continental shelf of the Black Sea, you'll find there's no benthic, there's no animals living on the bottom, just fish that come and go, because when it has in the winter, deadly water comes in. So you would talk to the fishermen and they say, well, we don't fish in the winter because our nets come up smelly. like smelling like rotten eggs, i.e. hydrogen sulfide. So you can have in the shallower waters, we found where the bodies, where the animals had eaten the flesh, but the water hadn't dissolved. And so I mean, it dissolved the bones. So you have the skeleton remains. In the shallow water, you have the whole body in the deeper water. And we were able to get their DNA and found that they were from the time of Alexander the Great on this one particular ship. So that's a long answer to your question.
Bob, I feel like I should have spent more time in geology class 50 years ago.
There's always
I learned
time.
more in
Well,
5
there's
minutes.
always time. And remember when I took geology, they told me a crock of baloney. It was called Marshall Kay's geosynclinal cycle, which is absolutely baloney until plate tectonics came along and made it simple. And I've always said, if you can't tell a 5-year-old what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. And if you had time, I'll give you a tutorial in a few seconds on plate tectonics.
Well,
All right, so
there's a couple good questions in our chat.
Yeah.
Greg
fire
Yost.
away.
Yeah, Greg, are you unmuted? I think you are. Can you hear us, Greg? I looked and you were unmuted a bit ago.
Yeah, go to participants and we'll see. No, go, you'll see whether he's unmuted.
I've asked
We
him.
only,
Okay.
no, where's
Greg's
Greg?
I
unmuted.
can,
I think
Yeah.
here I am.
Yep.
There he is.
Can you?
All right.
Great. Okay. Good to talk with you on the other side of the world. Thanks so much for the stories. These are terrific. I really appreciate this. My question in the chat was a couple people sort of hinted at this. Who owns these wrecks? Are you allowed to take items off of it, either
A
for
warship,
scientific study?
you have to get into international law. For example, I have found warships in the case the Bismarck. I found it in the high seas at 16,000 feet. And a warship is forever the property of that nation, unless the nation is no longer around. So the Bismarck is owned by Germany. And what was really interesting, when I found the Bismarck, the West German government claimed it, not the East German government. I said, Roger that. In the case of the Titanic, it's an interesting law of the sea issue. So when I found the Titanic, it was in international waters. Okay. So now you trace back its ownership. Obviously, the White Star Line owned the Titanic. But then when it sank, their insurance company paid off their insurance policy. But then the insurance company wrote it off their books, which made it an abandoned shipwreck. Whereas the Lusitania, the ownership has always resided in a person. It's Craig Stem. When I drove on the Lusitania, I had to get the permission from the owner. The Britannic, which is the sister ship of the Titanic, is owned by a person. And I had to get permission from that. I brought the owner with me to dive on the Lusitania. So here's what happened. So I went to the courts in Norfolk, and this was between my finding it and going back. Because obviously when we found it, all we did was imagery. So I went into that court and I talked to the judge, and he said, it's an abandoned shipwreck. Therefore, when you return, if you bring up an object, and I didn't bring up an object from the Titanic the first time, if you bring in an object from the ship, coffee cup, White Star Line on it, whatever it is, and document you, I will award you salver of possession, written in the 1600s.
Okay.
So they were going way back to Admiral. Well, that's what they do. You know, now AI does it much faster than them. But anyway, you go in, and he said, Admiralty law, the only one we got on the books, you crazy guy, is at this time is 1600s. If you were awarded salver of possession, you must salvage it, or you cannot claim it. Oh. And I did not want to own it. I've never taken anything from a. You want to?
they can't hear.
Okay, you can't hear all the chatter going. Okay, I found ships of all ages. Okay, now I have never recovered an object from any ship unless a project archaeologist asked me to. When you recover ancient shipwrecks, for example, the ones I brought up from the time of Alexander the Great, or pick one, how about from the Iron Age, 750 BC, the terracotta pottery is pressure impregnated with salt water because it's a great pressure. If you take pressure like Bismarck, 16,000 feet, cut it in half, it's 8,000 pounds per square inch. So the seawater will force its way into the lattice structure of the object. And if you recover it and you just let it sit there, it'll develop salt crystals that will shatter it. So you have to put it immediately back into fresh water and monitor the pH of the water till it flatlines, and you know that you've removed all of the salt from that terracotta pottery. Then you have to dry it equally from inside and outside. It's a very elaborate, costly procedure. And the second thing you do after you've stabilized it, which can take up to 6 months to stabilize it, you have to protect it in perpetuity. And I looked that up in the dictionary, and it's a long time. And I have no desire to burden my family with protecting an amphora that was cost $9. Okay, so plus I'm not into being a salvager because a lot of them, I don't want to classify a typical salvager, but it's not the world I live in. And I'm an academic, and I don't want to go down that road. Now, my wife, Barbara, says, can't you find just one treasure ship? And I said, no. So
one treasure.
she's aboard right now, so I'll see what she's going to be saying. But so the point is, I have no desire. You don't go to Gettysburg with a shovel.
No.
And you don't go to the Arizona and get belt buckles and sell them. I find that completely disgusting. Plus, I'm a futurist. Clearly, I've been introducing the future all my life. If you look at the Titanic, for example, or look here in Iron Bottom Sound, in the case of the Titanic, like all ships transiting, they were transiting in a same route that the cable company's been laying cables across the Atlantic from Brest, France to Newfoundland. So that's the shortest route across the North America is from Brest, France to Newfoundland, and where they come ashore. Also, Nova Scotia. So running by the Titanic are cables that they've been laying and relaying and relaying and relaying. I want to turn the Titanic and other ships, clearly the ones here, could easily be turned into underwater museums. It wouldn't take a whole heck of a lot to lay a cable from a museum in Honiara and install a remotely controlled vehicles or cameras and do it live. Leave it where it is. These shipwrecks are fairly stabilizing after a while. I mean, if they're wood bores, they're eating the deck, and they pretty much stabilized. Now, in case of PT-109, it had mahogany deck, so it still has its deck. The Bismarck had teak, and it still has its deck. But the wood bores didn't wait for ships. They waited for Mother Nature to float a log out to them, and they evolved around the diet of pine or whatever that floats and sinks. So that's gone. But once it's stabilized, I remember coming in on the Titanic on the starboard side of bridge, aligned with the bridge at the bilge keel. I came in and there was the bilge keel with its anti-rolling strip, and the hull of the ship was pink. That's because when they built it, they painted the hull with anti-fouling paint, and the anti-fouling paint is still working. Huh. It's only rusty where they didn't paint it. Now, they should have said, well, we're going to go sink this puppy. We need to paint the whole damn ship with this paint.
They planned it.
They weren't thinking forward, okay? So I propose, and this, again, sounds crazy. They have super tankers now that once they launch them, they cannot dry dock them. They can't dry it. So they have a device like a swimming pool cleaner that you can, a magnetic device, you can clamp it on the hull and it'll roto-rooter the hull and clean it.
Wow.
Then they have an anti-fouling paint that you can deploy underwater. So I would clean it and paint it because the hull is what's holding the ship together. That sounds ridiculous, but I don't think it's ridiculous. So anyway, how we doing?
We're doing great. You're at time. We've got to run, but we are going to have Frank Thompson come here and join us. So
yes, so I'm going to bring in I'm the pre-show of the rock band, where the guy comes out and does
the warm up
show. Now we're bringing in the star here, and I'm going to get it up and pull him in.
Just behind you.
Oh, he's sitting in his seat.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Right behind me. Can they zoom in on him? Should.
This one doesn't zoom, so we stay in focus in the
All right.
game.
So
anything you want to say, Bob, to this great group?
So stay tuned.
History?
We're just hitting our stride, and so we're going to get them all.
Well, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for everything you do and your time. Megan, thank you.
Oh, pleasure. We're going to have Frank come in here and join us in just a minute. Thank you all for all of these questions. We'll definitely get a chance to chat about them and show you some of the things that we've been seeing in this first week. As Bob mentioned there in the story, so these are entirely visual-only inspections. There will be no sampling of the memorial sites here in Iron Bottom Sound. These are fit and final resting places for the servicemen of all the nations that gave the ultimate sacrifice in this place. Another thing that's been really exciting about this work is that our team is assembled of all former combatant nations, plus several hundred experts all over the world who are ready, contributing to dives, helping us with everything from, calibers of machine guns to the in-war refits and renovations between classes. We've had some really interesting moments where we've been checking in on ships that even across the 6 months of the Solomon Islands campaign, how these vessels were changing, and being able to do that detective work to really check in on those details and be sure we're confirming things. Also seeing the changes across 30 years. So as you can see here, I'm up in the studio in the control room, and we'll have Frank join us in just a moment. I want to take a second and show you the beautiful view out here off of EV Nautilus. It is a lovely day in Iron Bottom Sound right now.
What landmass is that in front of the ship, Megan?
Let me see. We are let me get another camera to orient. That is Guadalcanal, right in front of us. And one of the things that I think has been, most stunning to me, I don't know if anyone's had the privilege to get to travel to the Solomon Islands and be a guest in these waters or on this place. But for all the reading, for all the podcasts, for all the films, for all the historical records that I've read preparing for this expedition that's been in development well over a year, several years, 30 years in Dr. Ballard's world, it still shocked me how small the confined waters were. To stand on deck and spin 360 and see Savo, see Angela Islands, over to Tulagi, where the floatplane base was, it really is stunning. So.
It is. Last night when we got off watch, we had been exploring the wreck of the USS Walk, and as we stepped out on deck, the moon was shining over over Iron Bottom Sound, and we were, of course, right in the waters where Walk was sunk. And a bunch of us from the watch were looking out over the railing and just trying to imagine what it was like for those sailors from the Walk and sister ship Preston that were lost at the same time, drifting overnight in those waters. And just the dichotomy of looking out of this beautiful, peaceful, serene image today and what it must have been like 80 something years ago. We were all kind of just taken back by that.
Yeah, no doubt. We were as well. We were also talking about what we believe are ready to confirm is Terazuki that we dove on this morning, the translation being shining moon. And for that, to find that the night of the full moon, I stepped out on deck about 2:30 this morning when I woke up to come up here to the studio, and that was just before we came down on that site that had been located by Drex. Do you want to introduce yourself,
Oh,
Frank?
sure. I'm sorry.
And no worries. I
Yeah.
gave you a little intro before, and
Okay.
then we'll have plenty of questions that folks
Sure.
want to talk about.
My name is Frank Thompson, and I'm the Director of the Collection Management Division for the U.S. Navy History and Heritage Command in Washington, D.C. My office oversees the Navy's historic artifact collection, art collection. I also manage the underwater archaeology and conservation programs for the Navy.
Wow, fascinating job, Frank. It's thank you for talking to us, speaking with us. There was
my pleasure.
One question in the chat when Dr. Ballard was on that I think you'd be able to answer. Given the shallow sea there in Iron Bottom Sound, all that, these wrecks are reasonably easily accessible by non-professionals. So has there been over the 80 some years since the war any robbing of the artifacts, any disturbing of the ships by other people?
On this site, I haven't noted anything. It is a problem on other sites. We have recovered things, artifacts that had been recovered from wrecks without permission, from the Normandy invasion a few years back, I guess about 10 years now. Our attaché in Australia contacted us because a diver had been visiting Indonesia and dove on the wreck of USS Houston, which was a sister ship to the Northampton that we dove on, and had discovered a trumpet that had belonged to one of the ship's band members and had recovered it. And that type of thing is illegal. The person who did it didn't realize that, and so he contacted the attaché and returned it. So it got transported back to us. It's now part of our archaeological collection, and we use it to talk about things like the U.S. has a law called the Sunken Military Craft Act, which kind of sets the procedures and how the U.S. views the wrecks of their ships and aircraft. The U.S. government does not surrender title to these things. These wrecks still, in our view, belong to the U.S. Navy. They are considered war graves, fit and final resting places. So we try to protect these things as much as we can, and the law helps us, gives us the mechanism to cooperate with other countries because Iron Bottom Sound is in territorial waters of the Solomon Islands. They have their own cultural resource laws, so we coordinate as much as we can with these entities and try to build partnerships to help serve everybody's goal, which is to preserve the wrecks.
Yeah, I would add from just the operational standpoint, a major part of Nautilus Live is sharing those live views and giving people as much over the shoulder perspective to this work as we can. We love that, and when we're diving on sites like maritime heritage sites, we put in place for national law, for international best practices, and our own policies. We have the obligation through getting a permit, through partnering with groups like the Navy, the obligation to protect those locations. So some things you may notice on Nautilus Live, there's usually a map you could just zoom in and see where the ship is. We've even disabled some of the ship's emergency systems, our AIS system, which is a ship-to-ship beacon. We have narrowed down the footprint of where you can detect our beacon, even so that we cannot be looked up online to get these specific locations. So lots of work goes into that preservation.
Yeah, we recently, in the last few years, have gotten an exception or an exemption from the Freedom of Information Act to protect the coordinates of the wrecks, because we were getting some FOIA requests saying, what is it, we'd like to know the location of such and such wreck. We no longer have to provide that, and so that's just another way to protect these things. I'd also say that partnerships like this and being able to dive on these wrecks is also important, because I often get asked about, ecotourism, as these wrecks become more accessible because of, improvements in diving technology. It's our hope that being able to do surveys like this with, complete and accurate video footage of them will kind of serve as an alternative where we can, the public can see these wrecks, see how they're being transformed into the current ecosystems, but also still protect them from people actually diving on them
Yeah.
en masse.
Yeah, absolutely.
A few months ago, I caught the National Geographic special on the 3D model of the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
Know what I'm talking? And it was just, to me, amazing. It just was as if I was walking, along the bottom of the ocean next to the Titanic and what you could see.
Mm-hmm.
Are those kind of plans in place for the shipwrecks?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we are assembling with those high resolution near seafloor maps and imagery overlays. Give you a view here of just a single still image, but our ROVs, our remotely operated vehicles, our car-sized robots, work together as a team. Hercules on the seafloor, Atalanta as the helicopter view, eyes in the sky up above. That enables us to do several things. It allows us to carefully navigate and direct the ROVs around these sites, but also safely navigate to get those incredibly detailed images. So we're capturing overlapping picture by overlapping picture, and together those tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of images by the time we're done here, we'll be able to create those models, and those models, which will be devoid from their specific coordinates, will all be available publicly through Nautilus Live.
And my team of archaeologists use such things as aids in their STEM programs, where they go out and talk to school children and are able to give them a visual representation of what the wrecks look like on the bottom. So we're hoping to expand that capability in the coming years, because judging by what we've seen with dives like this, it does capture the interest of many people around the world.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit. Can we talk about New Orleans? Because this is big breaking news out here, and we're really excited about it.
It's been news here already. We've seen some of the articles already here.
Absolutely. It's in Military Times, it's in Stars and Stripes, it is on CNN, Fox, ABC, CBS, you name it. We've been talking with them out here, and we're really, really proud to see so many folks interested in this story. Certainly a story of tremendous heroism in the U.S. Navy. What did we find, Frank?
Well, it was kind of an amazing find. And it also demonstrates the new technologies we're using. We were reviewing the data from is it the Drixstone, correct? And this image came across the screen, and it looked to us like it was just bow shaped. The lines and things were kind of really stood out, and we were speculating as this happened at a change in watch, and so as the watch was changing, we were speculating, gee, I wonder if this could possibly be the bow from the New Orleans. And the New Orleans was the lead ship of her class of heavy cruisers, and 3 of them were sunk in the first battle of Savo Island on the night of 8-9 August. But later in the campaign, New Orleans and her sister ship Minneapolis took part in the Battle of Tassafaronga, where the heavy cruiser Northampton was sunk. But both New Orleans and her sister Minneapolis took long lance torpedo hits, which basically destroyed the bows on both ships. The one on New Orleans in particular was catastrophic, because it resulted in the loss of the entire forward part of the ship from the forward of turret 2, which I think you can see a picture of it now.
Yeah.
Turret 2, and then it just ends. Everything forward of that is gone. And the ship was lucky to survive that encounter, as was her sister Minneapolis. And so when we began exploring this object on the bottom, we were able to look at some of the key identifying factors, and I was actually sitting in this same chair with with Megan, going over it, and we were pulling up some historic pictures of the ship, and we noted the collar around the anchor is quite distinctive on the New Orleans class heavy cruiser, so that was our first indication.
See, you can see that here.
Yeah. And then looking at a picture of the ship in dry dock pre-war, there was kind of a distinctive little mark in her stem, the forward part of her bow. You went past it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here in the video.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And so we were able to pick that part out in the wreck too. So that clearly had indicated we were looking at the bow structure of a New Orleans class cruiser. And we kind of, by process of elimination, knew that we'd found a lost part of the battle, which was quite exciting because now we know what happened to that. Unfortunately, we couldn't see the wreckage of the turret 1, which was also lost. And of course, that led to some speculation after we went public with this that, how do you know this isn't the Minneapolis bow? Because it's obvious you don't see the turret. I think you're wrong. This is the Minneapolis. And this is where the historic record comes into play, because after these actions and everything, the Navy compiled a inquiry and they engaged all the survivors and wrote down all their recollections of things and kind of pieced together the story, and then they're published and disseminated so that past mistakes are not repeated. And excuse me, we know from that record that the Minneapolis, although the hit was equally severe, her bow did not fully detach from the hull, but had crumpled over, and it was partially submerged, but it was still attached to the main hull. The ship made it over across the sound to Tulagi, and that's where the Seabees they cut that off and built a kind of a false temporary bow. But the bow of the Minneapolis is actually across the sound in Tulagi. So, we kind of, laid all concerns to rest on that we are in fact looking at the New Orleans bow, and it's quite a find.
Yeah.
Quite the historical detective.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Is I liken it to it's like a combination of old, new technology like the Drix, but there's still something to be said for going through the musty archives of paper.
There's another question in the chat that I think is a fairly good one. Chuck Myers, I asked you to unmute. You want to ask your question?
Yeah, first of all, say hello to Sam Cox, who is nominally my boss on the USS Hornet. So if you'll do that for me, I'd appreciate it. My question is that a number of ships had their keels broken before they sank, and I was wondering if when you're down on the ocean bottom, can you determine which ones of those ships were in that kind of a condition?
Probably we'll probably have to review these dives over and over again. One thing I think we have kind of confirmed is, most of the ships we're looking at were designed under the terms of the Washington and London naval treaties.
Yeah.
And, the key component there was limiting the size of these things. And so each of the navies that built ships to those treaty terms went to rather draconian methods of weight saving. And what we're seeing here is that the scantlings used in the construction of some of the ship's structure, especially around the bow area, tended to be very tender. And there were some pre-war indications that the bow areas were potential weak spots with ships caught in storms that were at anchor and dragging the anchor chain and causing some damage to the hull structure. And what we discovered on each of the New Orleans class cruisers, which are definitely treaty cruisers, was that all of them are missing their bows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're looking at the stern of Vincennes right now, but all the bows are gone. One of the more intriguing finds was that when Astoria sank, her bow apparently was severed from the hull, but it looks like it possibly got entangled in her anchor chain and dragged down, and it's actually now resting on top of what was her aircraft hangar. So you're looking at the ROVs going from the aft end to the forward, and then all of a sudden you hit the ship's bow structure laying on top of the hull. I mean, it was like, wow. We're also seeing a lot of damage from in the midship areas, which again was kind of a known potential vulnerability. It's where the cruisers carried their float planes. So you had the aviation gasoline, and then you had the black powder charges for the catapult system. So those were known potential fire hazards. And of course, each one of those ships, when they were torpedoed, all of them experienced a massive fire midships, which was a contributing factor to their loss because they got caught. They basically cut the ship in two. You had firefighters fighting from the forward part of the ship, and then you had those aft trying to fight the same fire from a different perspective, but there was no way to communicate and coordinate their efforts. And each of those ships in that area is just devastated. I think we saw evidence of maybe one catapult remaining, but again, it had also fallen off the wreck. So again, I probably ranted a little bit more than from your question, but I think, yeah, when we're able to really dissect these videos, we're going to find all kinds of interesting things about ship design.
Yes, absolutely. And just to share the list, and there will be highlight videos of every one of these images released of every one of these. Our spectacular team are here on board editing around the clock to get these out to the world. If you missed the live dives, but we did dive so far with 2 more weeks to go already on Vincennes, Astoria, Quincy, discovered the bow of the New Orleans, dove on Northampton, on Canberra, on Laffey, on Udachi, on De Haven, Preston, Walk, and now what we believe to be Terazuki, the destroyer. So it's been a really busy first week, but we hope you'll be with us.
It's been exciting
too.
It's hard to believe a week has gone by.
It is. It is. I did want to see the question of who's supporting this. I can just share really quickly. This expedition is funded by NOAA Ocean Exploration through our partnership with the Cooperative Institute, Ocean Exploration Cooperative Institute. You can think about it a little like a think tank for ocean exploration. We've been brought together as partners, the Ocean Exploration Trust, the University of New Hampshire, who operate DRIX, and several other universities and partners to figure out how we can advance ocean exploration to meet the pace of the needs of what we need to understand about the ocean. So they funded this expedition, and that allowed us over the last year or so to bring in partners all around the world to be part of it. Frank, Hiroshi Ishii, who's here from Kyoto University in Japan, the director of the Solomon Islands National Museum, all of these partners coming together here. Back to you, Glenn. I was just like, we should get that one in.
A couple more questions that are in the chat, which I'll try to paraphrase in order to save some time here. And just to be clear, because it's been a little bit of this back and forth in the chat, there are no human remains left when you dive.
We have not encountered any.
Yeah.
We don't believe we will, given the time and depth and things. But if we do come across a human remain or something that, like a boot or something that could possibly be an indicator, there are procedures in place for the team to better let you answer that one.
We know that Nautilus, we like to say cradle to cane is who we aim to reach with Nautilus Live, that there's something to be inspired by at all ages in the ocean and to be part of the process of discovery. So certainly out of respect to the service members, their families, and our viewers, we have, there's a big red button on the wall that if and as needed, we can hit to kill the feeds, be able to move on from that place. In order to ensure this place has the honor and respect that it deserves.
And when we're down on the wrecks, and we're looking at a site that potentially could show some human remains, like the remains of a gun turret or something that's clearly been blown apart or something, I usually do remind people that just remember that we are looking at a place where sailors made the ultimate sacrifice,
Right.
and it's a sobering moment to that, and just want people to remember that. And yeah, we will be very respectful of if we do find any human remains.
Yeah.
And these dives generally are non-invasive.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
A couple other questions, if I could ask for our members. Clearly, Iron Bottom Sound is an incredible concentration of military shipwrecks, given the battles that occurred there and around there. Are there other locations in the Pacific or anywhere where there could be such a concentration of shipwrecks, military
Yeah,
shipwrecks?
absolutely. You know, the Philippine campaign was also a very hard fought campaign around the Philippine Islands, and there are many wrecks there. And then once the war had reached the coast of Japan, like off Okinawa, Iwo Jima, where the fleet pretty much became stationary, they weren't as constantly on the move as they had been. It was easier for the Japanese to find them, so there are a number of destroyer wrecks and things like that in those areas. So yeah, Guadalcanal and Iron Bottom Sound is one, but there are certainly others in the Pacific area.
Yeah. Someone suggested Truck, maybe Rabaul.
Yeah, Truk was a supply base, and the U.S. forces dropped mines to block the harbor, and there were a lot of merchant ships in there for supply. The Japanese garrison, they were trapped, and they were then sunk as resources became available. I believe Hiroshi, our Japanese representative, has actually done some dives in Chuk Lagoon, Chuk as it's called now,
Where a
on
lot of
those
his
wrecks.
training was.
And he does speak about what an amazing experience that is.
Yeah, yeah. And then one other I'll ask from the chat. Are there any particular ships that you're looking for that you haven't found
Ooh,
in Iron
great
Bottom?
question.
Yes. Well, I think everybody here knows
Yeah.
knows we are hoping.
We both have answers.
Yeah, we're hoping. When I say we, I mean U.S. Navy History and Heritage Command would really like to find the wreck of USS Jarvis, which was a destroyer lost on that in the first days of the battle around here. She'd been damaged early on and was leaving Guadalcanal for repairs, but she was under attack again, and she actually encountered Mikawa's force coming down for that first battle. But we're not really sure what her fate is. We believe she was sunk in an airstrike the next day after the battle, but Jarvis is one of two surface ships that the U.S. Navy lost in World War II with all hands. And so we don't know what her final fate was. We don't know what her final hours were like, but we would like to find her wreck so that we can, they may be gone, but we don't want them to be lost. We don't want the families and things to feel like they're lost and forgotten.
Sure. Wow.
I think I would add that my hope is that in addition to the 111 naval ships that were lost in these home campaigns, there were over 1,450 aircraft also lost here. Now, DRIC's mapping resolution mapping resolution is a factor of depth and frequency of your sonar. So in all those combinations together, we certainly have the possibility in some of the shallower parts of the sound to be acquiring targets, certainly as we get down closer to Henderson Field. But likely that some of the unknown targets DRICS may be revealing would be aircraft.
Yeah.
I'm the granddaughter of two aviators, naval aviator and a colonel. Papa Cook went on to be a colonel in the Air Force, was the Air Force came to be. So the planes have a special place in my heart. And, that would mean a lot to me if we have the opportunity to tell some of those stories.
Yeah,
But
I believe-
TBD, tune in with us.
Yeah, I believe our Japanese rep Hiroshi is also interested in finding more of the aircraft wrecks as well. It is, when we've been diving on these wrecks, it's also interesting to just how confined these waters are and the ferocity of the battle. But when we're looking at, we go from these wrecks and we come across them and all this, and it's like, which battle did these take place in? Was this was the first one in August, this one was in November, this one was in October. And so it's like you're not just going from wreck to wreck, you're also kind of drawing lines. Okay, which battle was this one lost in, and all this. So it's like a maze almost of trying to make sure that we put the wrecks in the right context of the battle, because each of these battles were so close together.
Yeah.
So
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, incredible history. Well, listen, we've gone well beyond the hour we had talked about. But I don't know, Todd, anybody else? Are there questions that you'd like to pose before we run out of time?
Steve Corbett asks, have any World War II military aircraft been accidentally found? And are you able to identify them, aircraft?
Nautilus Live we have found some here on Nautilus. We actually found one on Halloween night off the coast of Italy many years ago when the ship was in the Mediterranean. And it was a viewer watching on Nautilus Live who had a personal connection to a member of their family had flown that same aircraft type. And we're able to tell the team of geologists and biologists who happened to be in the science row at the time, it was not a maritime heritage focused expedition. And we were able to image that and make that connection. So far on this expedition, we've not encountered any aircraft yet, but of course, in the world's ocean and all the history that it contains, definitely happened.
A couple months ago, a similar expedition like this on board the Okeanos, which was a NOAA ship, and I think OET was also involved with that, as was Naval History and Heritage Command. We did find an amazing discovery at Midway when we were looking at the wreck of the aircraft carrier Yorktown. And we were able to take a little risk, and we lowered the ROV down through one of the aircraft carrier's elevator wells, because the elevators had been blown away or fallen out when the ship sank. But we were able to kind of get a look inside her hangar, and much to our surprise, we did find at least 3, maybe 4 aircraft that were still on the hangar deck. And those were the first aircraft we had found associated with the Battle of Midway. And we were in awe at that. And then we were actually able to dig up the history of them and found out that they actually were not Yorktown planes, or at least 2 of them were from the Enterprise. And they had landed on Yorktown because they had been shot up in action, and they needed to land quickly. And that was the first flight deck. So they landed there, and then were subsequently part of the battle from that perspective, and then the planes came to rest on the seafloor with them. So, it's with things like this, there's no telling what you're going to find.
True.
And it's fascinating to be part of something like this.
No doubt.
So Jeff Ballard had a question. Jeff, are you still unmuted?
Yeah, no, Todd unmuted me. Frank, what was the second ship that was lost with all hands? Jarvis was the first.
USS Pillsbury, old 4-piper destroyer. And she was lost, I think, near Christmas Island, I think is where her wreck was discovered.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
The question of Jeff and Frank, as the sort of Navy historians in this discussion, as you uncover all this information and all this knowledge about, these ships and what happened 80 some years ago, have you found anything that has changed your view of the history of the battles that occurred?
Well, one of the things I hope we're able to do when we find all the wrecks is that we can then plot them, in a way we know where their current locations are versus what their calculated locations were when they were sunk. When we were off Midway, we found that we had calculated some positions where we thought the Japanese carriers would be, but as we found out that no, they really weren't. One of them was almost, I think, 16 kilometers away from where we calculated. So it'll be kind of interesting once we know where these ships are to then review the plot of the battle and how we've interpreted over the years and see what changes, where the positions actually are, and how does that affect the narrative of what we know about the battle. Jeff, I don't know your perspective on that.
Well, this is my 3rd summer on Guadalcanal, the 4th expedition to the Solomons. And this is something that I've been learning about since I was 11 years old. And I, read all the literature. I thought I really understood what this was all about. and then I came here, and it really kind of emphasized something that Bob says all the time, and that you can't really know until you go. I thought I knew what this place was all about. I thought I knew how steep the hillsides were. I thought I knew how wide the rivers were. I thought I knew what temperature and humidity were like until the doors of the plane opened. And then I realized that that I'm learning all of this over from the very beginning.
One thing I don't know, Megan, do you still have the picture of the salute?
Oh, I'm not sure if I have it here.
There's
but you can describe it.
Yeah,
Take a look.
as
See if I can get it up.
after the campaign kind of wound down and the Guadalcanal was secured, the battles began to move westward. Guadalcanal and Hendersonville still remained operational as supply points, and so occasionally U.S. destroyers would sail and ships would sail down what they called the slot and enter Iron Bottom Sound, as it was then called, and they would perform a navigational maneuver they called the S, which was a salute to all the victims of the battles around the area. And there's some aerial pictures of it. We're trying to find one quickly.
Got it.
And Megan, being the genius that she is, has located
Thanks,
it. And it really is quite a sight. She's going to pull one up.
Keep talking. It's
Yeah,
coming.
so I'm hoping that I could possibly talk the Nautilus folks into when we're done with the
Absolutely will.
with the project and before we head into port, that we can kind of perform that S maneuver as a salute to all sailors and Marines who gave their lives in this campaign, whether they be American, Australian, New Zealanders, or Japanese.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Brilliant.
We'll have to enhance it. Get it.
What else? Anybody else like to take advantage of these experts that we have from the other side of the world?
Last call for questions. I think that may be it.
I did see one at the very, very beginning. I just wanted to give voice to here from Donald. There are many veterans that sail on our team. Many of our sonar and navigation techs, and Nautilus also has a partnership with the service academies, the Coast Guard Academy and Naval Academy, to bring out interns aboard Nautilus each year. So maintaining those strong connections. One of OET's partners in both our STEM program, so our workforce program in getting science and engineering advanced with students, is the Office of Naval Research, as well as supporting different camera and technology applications for underwater. So among our current crew, I'm like, I know I will miss someone if I start listing it, but we often find folks with the expertise there in operations at sea, and certainly in sonar and acoustics. Obviously a very connected parallel there between the two.
I do have one more question. Actually, Nick DeVoe
there's a
from
couple.
St. Lucia. He is very familiar with the sea. He asked if there are any environmental impact assessments that have been done for oil or other pollutants from the wrecks.
Yeah.
Also, there's a sense of how much oil may still be aboard the wrecks and if cleanup may be necessary.
That is one of the things my underwater archaeology folks are researching. There have been occasions where the Navy has removed fuel oil from wrecks, notably the oiler Mississinawa, which was sunk, I believe, in Ulithi Lagoon. She was sunk pretty fully loaded, so and she'd begun leaking oil into the lagoon. So, and this was about, I want to say 2000, early 2000, early to mid 2000 aughts. But a team went in using the ship's plans and were able to remove as much of the oil as they could. Off Kwajalein, they also removed as much of the remaining fuel oil they could from the old German cruiser Prinz Eugen, which had been used as a target in the bikini test. One of the reasons NHHC is participating in this is we're hoping to get condition assessments of these wrecks so that we can begin assessing what the environmental impact is to fuel oil. We have seen satellite scans of this area where they've tracked oil slicks and things, and so most of them kind of line up with wrecks. So we're hoping to be able to assess the condition and then kind of plot out what strategy if we do need to start planning to initiate some sort of an action. The other part of the environmental question is these ships were also sunk with ammunition.
Yes.
And as we discovered last night on the wreck of the Walk, we came across several torpedo heads that, you have to treat those with respect. The depth charges and things like that. They may have been put on safe, but they've also been on the bottom of the ocean for 8 decades. And Japanese ordnance in particular at that point in the war was kind of known to be kind of overly sensitive. So we were very careful about not getting the ROVs close.
No doubt, 1,000-pound warhead in the Type 93 is nothing we want our robot anywhere near.
But that's something else, we tend to warn people about when they're diving on these things is be mindful that there are dangers. I mean, we see the beauty of the sea life that's reclaiming these ships, but there's also still a very distinct and very serious hazard if you're not careful.
When you land at Henderson Field and step off of your flight, Qantas, Fiji Air, Salmon Air, whoever you fly in with, the first banner that greets you is actually a large roll-up poster with pictures of degraded ammunition and ordnance and gives you warnings about hiking and being sure that you're aware. So, it is ever present on land and in sea here as we go forward in the next decade.
In fact, my office has actually been contacted by explosive ordnance disposal teams that still work in these areas, often looking for copies of the old manuals for fuses and things like that for Japanese and American small ordnance like grenades and mines and things, because again, that's stuff they're still cleaning up after all these years.
Wow.
My personal favorite on the that chart in the airport was do not take a bomb or something home as a souvenir. It's like wise advice.
I had the great pleasure to work and live in Hawaii for a long time, and I had a supervisor that was like, I do not ever want to see a picture of someone sitting on a bomb underwater because there's a bomb built right into a reef.
Yeah.
Part of the safety briefing you never thought you knew you would need.
And it's not just here. I mean, our artifact collection numbers over 300-something thousand objects, and there's ordnance in that collection. And one of the things we've had to do is begin a process to verify the inert certification of it, because over time, the definition of inert has changed. And so some things that might have been considered inert in 1955, in 2025, it's not. So we're very careful about things like that, and it is a responsibility we take very seriously.
Are there any human divers on any of these dives? Is it all remote?
Not on this one.
Off of this ship. So in parallel, not funded by the NOAA work, but a parallel effort that Dr. Ballard mentioned a little bit in the shallow water program is an experimental program working to bring some of the same family of tools, high resolution mapping sonars and geo-referenced imagery together into a shallow water program. So there is some ongoing work that was happening the week sort of before Nautilus arrived. And as Nautilus heads off on our next expedition to the Marshall Islands, there will be a small team here continuing to work there, doing some of those diving-based things, but we are not, our ROVs actually in waters this warm would overheat in any waters that a diver would be safe in. So within their design, they need the colder water of the deep sea. So it kind of a Venn diagram of two circles on those two efforts.
The Naval History and Heritage Command does, their archaeology program does have a dive component, but it's for much shallower and narrower projects. Like I have a team that's up at Lake Champlain right now looking at a Revolutionary War wreck. We've done some wrecks off Key West. We're going to probably participate in another exercise in Indonesia later this year, but that's in coordination with the Navy's official Navy divers. And will provide one of ours, but we partner with the Navy dive program so that when we need augmentation to support that type of operation, we have people who are better able to do that and to assist us on that. So,
Great.
Todd, should we hang up the phone?
I think so, but I do want to, before we go, just say this in the chat. Nick DeVoe very kindly put in the chat, I've had the live feed on for most of the day, and the professionalism and care exhibited by all the operators was superb. Kudos to the entire crew.
thank you.
Thank you.
I made the same comment to the ROV pilots last night after the rather kind of challenging things we were discovering on the walk wreck. And afterwards, I know you guys did a wonderful job, and so thank you for that comment.
We really, really appreciate it. And we hope you'll come exploring with us. It has been absolutely gorgeous here in Iron Bottom Sound, on the top of the water, beneath the water, obviously powerful, compelling stories, so much to learn, so much to see still ahead. And really hope you will be there with us, nautiluslive.org. And please send in your comments. Give us a little shout out that you were here at Veterans Breakfast Club so we can call it out on the live feed as well. Glenn, Todd, thank you for the opportunity to connect with your community here.
Thank you very much, Megan. This is a memorable night for us.
Thanks so very much. Fascinating. Jeff, thank you for the original connection. And please pass on our regards to Dr. Ballard as well. Thank you
will.
for giving us his time.
All right.
All the best.